Thank you. So I think because you're a rock star, we have some beer for you. It's right there.
What's that?
That's beer.
Oh, beer.
Yeah, in case
It's
you
very,
want some.
very low tech, isn't it? Yeah. No, I don't do beer.
So, let's just get started. I think the question that everyone has here is, what is it like to be a rock star?
It's fantastic. I recommend it to anybody.
Is it lines of cocaine in the morning and groupies at night?
Not this century.
Not this century.
No. There was a time for all of that.
Yeah.
And you can read about it in my book. No. Yeah, I think there's a time when it's hard to resist all of that stuff. But no, aging gracefully is.
So that's changed, right? Everything's changed. You know, one of the things that has changed dramatically is how you create content and distribute it, right? How has that changed the way you make music with Twitter and YouTube and things like that?
Wow. Well, let's talk about making music, first of all.
Let's talk about how you make music.
I think the first album we did, we recorded it on 16 tracks of analog tape. And the last album, we did it on an infinite track system, Pro Tools, which allows infinite layering at very little sort of sound quality loss. But you know, I'm not too sure if that's an improvement for the better. I think you have to. I mean, limitations are good, you know.
Well, so I mean, there's people on iTunes that have, you know, they've created albums in their bedroom and distributed those. Do you see a difference in the quality of that compared to the way you guys have used to do it in the past?
Well, I think clever people can make clever records, you know, and they can make clever records with nothing. You know, I'm reminded of Joe Meek, who built a recording studio in his bedroom. He was Welsh actually. He was the Welsh Phil Spector, and he made some extraordinary records. Telstar was one that was celebrating, you know, the Telstar satellite, and he made that in his bedroom, and he used to build these effects devices, and you know, and he made them for nothing. And so, you know, ingenuity will always win.
So you guys have always been known for innovating with technology. I believe you did one of the first music videos with 35mm film. Is that right?
Well, I think you have to. I think you've always got to be on the lookout for, you know, for new ways to present what you do. You know, and yeah, I mean, we talked about delivery systems. Well, you mentioned how the music gets released, how people get to hear the music. That's obviously significant. I mean, in the time we've been making music, we started with vinyl. We went to cassettes. It went to digital audio tape, which didn't really catch on. CD was massive, of course, and now you know, we're looking at MP3s. And the thing that I find difficult, I mean, I've always been very connected with the aesthetic that is presented alongside the music. I've always, I mean, as a kid, as a teenager, I always appreciated getting the album and, you know, and sort of losing myself.
Wait, what was your first album?
I think my first album was a Beatles album. It was a Beatles compilation album, actually, that came out in about 1970. And
that was not an MP3?
No. I mean, I've gone back to premium vinyl, actually. I mean, the premium vinyl is such a, you know, it's like it's quite a growth business at the moment. And I found myself, I'm not a drinker, actually. I consider my vinyl collection to be like my wine cellar, you know. And I'll take out an album and I'll play it as I would, you know, getting out a really distinctive bottle of wine and have that experience.
So I grew up as, I guess you could say, part of the MTV generation, and I remember coming home from school and watching people like you on MTV. And now I see the kids these days, and they're watching videos on YouTube. And you know, if you look at the top 20 videos of all time on YouTube, it is music videos. Does that change the way you create videos and how you think about making those?
Well, this All You Need Is Now is, I love that, by the way, All You Need Is Data. I really appreciate that because our album that came out last year was called All You Need Is Now. We did 2 videos for songs from that album. The first video, I mean, we put the album out independently with iTunes. That was a first for us this time, and we thought we would try that. I mean, the album that we'd done before was a low point in terms of connectivity with our audience. We did not know. We weren't sort of fashionable enough to be on radio. We weren't really getting a lot of media interest from the traditional norms. With our album, the album before this one, it was very difficult to even let our audience know that we had a new record out. Retail was dying. So this new album, we decided to go with iTunes. iTunes approached us. We were out of a major deal. So we decided to put a slightly shortened version of the album up on iTunes for a 3-month exclusive. And so we didn't have the kind of resources that a label would provide us with. The first video we made for $10,000. And it was very much a DIY kind of, we were all involved in building the set and, we kind of like that, we can get on board with that. There was nothing extraordinary about it. The most, extraordinary thing about it, I guess, was that we made it for $10,000. But then the next video we made was for Girl Panic, which was a completely the opposite. We didn't.
This was also for iTunes, this next video.
No, this is not. This video isn't yet on iTunes. This was entirely for us, really. We just felt it was time to do another video. This was about, 8 months after the release of All You Need Is Now. And we had an idea. We had an idea to get 5 supermodels from the 80s to come and play Duran Duran.
You didn't call me.
I know. Well, I didn't know you then. He was a supermodel in a past life. That idea in of itself started generating interest. And we ended up getting the video made, but it cost a lot of money to make it. We brought in sponsors to help fund it, but it was the first real viral success that Duran has had. It was the first product, if you will, I feel that we've put out understanding the game as it is being played today. And the video went out on the Monday. We knew it was out there. We had no control over it whatsoever. It wasn't a case of, are MTV going to play it? Is this going to happen? Are we going to get support for it? It was going to be out there, and would it find an audience? And it did. And 5 million people have seen it on YouTube thus far, and it's a huge success for us.
So does that so when 5 million people see a music video on YouTube, does that translate into sales for you?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm not sure that it has yet. I tend to think of it more as indirect brand enhancement.
Well, I would imagine, so you're playing a concert tonight, right? I would imagine that the people that see that video will then will go to the concert.
And there's definitely a feeling when we play the song that we're performing it as a hit song. Even though it hasn't been played on any radio stations in Germany or North America, the only exposure that it's had has been on YouTube. But it feels as though the audience knows it as they would have done a hit song.
So as you have gone from, you've been doing this for 30 years, is that right?
Yes.
I don't mean to
Age
talk
me.
about your age here, but how do you feel about, did you prefer it back then, the way that the technology, intervened in how you made music, or now? I mean, is it better today, or?
I don't know that it's better. I think what I've learned to do is to not attach. I don't attach to technology. I don't attach to media. Because I know it's going to change. And when you get attached to something, invariably you end up feeling distressed when it moves on.
But so as if there's a lot of people that are programmers and developers and things like that here, and as technology has enhanced the art that they've been able to create, and also as we'll get to in a little bit, the art that GAFTA did with you they've been able to create things that are, I would say, maybe a little bit more creative because of technology. Has that happened with the music industry? Do you see a fancy new guitar or drum kit or something, or whatever it is that allows you to make music that you probably wouldn't have maybe be able to make before?
Well, there are so many ways of looking at that. I mean, first thing I think about is the electronic drum kit, and like parents don't have to suffer, the drum kit in the garage anymore. That any kid can have a drum kit today because there are electronic ones that they can play on headphones. It's so many levels. Technology's changed. I think I do like the way that iTunes has changed the listening habits of the younger generation. And something I think about often is when I was a teenager, the music that I was listening to, it was really, I was 17 in 1977, and all the music that I listened to had been made in 1977 or 1976. And I think the way that iTunes plays to its audience today, of any age, it presents a much broader spectrum of music. And I think the younger listeners, as I like to refer to my children, listen to a much broader spectrum of music from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. And I love that iPod shuffle thing. And I think the way that throws music at you from all, especially if you've got a fairly, Catholic taste in your iTunes, which I think most of us have.
I think most people. So you have kids?
I do. I have a 23-year-old stepson, 21-year-old stepdaughter, and a 19-year-old daughter.
Anybody like Justin Bieber in the house?
No.
Do you have it on your shuffle?
What?
Do you have Justin Bieber on your iPod?
No, I'm not that Catholic.
You're on Twitter, right?
I am.
And has Twitter changed the way you communicate with your fans and talk about music and so on?
The best thing that Twitter has done for me is it helped me quit smoking. And I went on Twitter last Christmas, 13 months ago, really to get behind the iTunes release. I was a holdout. I was a holdout on Facebook and all forms of social media, actually. But having made the decision to put the album out on iTunes, I felt it was only fair to sort of get stuck in with social media. And Facebook, I kind of liked the idea of Facebook. I thought I was going to take to Facebook more, but it was Twitter that really sort of got my imagination, and I really began enjoying that really fast back and forth that I could get with fans, with friends all over the world, the immediate sort of feedback that I could get. But to go back, but April, I got sick, and I kept getting sick. I was a smoker, not a heavy smoker, but I put it out there on Twitter that I really needed to stop smoking, and I started getting all this really positive feedback, and it was like having a self-help group with me in my BlackBerry, day by day by day, and actually, it really made the difference because I don't know if anybody here is in a group therapy or anything like that, but there's something really shaming about having to go back to the group and say, I slipped. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have to go back to the tweet peeps and tell them that I'd had a cigarette last night. So it really kept me clean, and I think that's important.
I just quit from an app too.
Did you?
Yeah, 75 days ago. We should go outside and have a cigarette after this and talk about it. You said in a recent German Rolling Stones piece that live is your strength, is your biggest strength. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, actually, I'm not sure that's quite what I meant, because obviously without material, artists have to generate material all the time, or they can't have shows. We don't want to be a band that is only playing oldies. Even if 75% of the people that are going to come see us play tonight really want to see older songs, to keep our energy levels up, we need to have new material in there. So we constantly have to be, we have to be creating, we have to be writing new songs. But I do think that live, for me anyway, that's the place that I'm most comfortable. And I think that it's just one of those experiences that hasn't been improved on yet, and that's being in a room with musicians who kind of know what they're doing and are playing quite loud, and it's creating an experience that you really cannot get at home.
So you don't think it's been improved on, or it has?
I don't think it has. No.
So what could you do to make it a better experience?
Well.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Play longer, perhaps. I think it's all about stamina. Performance is performance. You can add all sorts of interactive. We do a lot of, we have interactive aspects to our show. This particular show is the most integrated in terms of projection media that we have going on. We've got a lot of really strong films that accompany the songs. I think it's the most integrated show in that sense that we've ever done. But the energy has to come from within, from musicians. That's really what it's all about. So it's all about staying healthy and keeping the energy levels up.
So you mentioned before that the retail record stores have kind of disappeared, or albums distribution. As someone who has been through several transitions of the music industry, did you, when you saw pirating of music, what was going through your head? Did it scare the shit out of you? I mean, is it?
I was never scared by it. I'm as I say, I mean, one of the positives to being sort of old school and really trusting in one's ability to stand on stage and perform a song is that you're not too concerned about what is happening, what is happening away from that. I personally have never felt threatened by pirating. I tend to feel that successful artists always seem to find remuneration. If you can connect with an audience, you're going to be okay. But not all of my bandmates feel that way. Nick feels very, very strongly about pirating. But no, I don't.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's something that has just started because of technology. Did you read the Steve Jobs book?
No.
So in the book that Walter Isaacson wrote, the second or third chapter, Steve Jobs talking about how he used to drive around, Palo Alto area when he was a teenager and buy bootlegs of Bob Dylan. So it existed then. It's just, I think it's spread a little bit more now.
Well, I was going to use that argument, but usually, I get descended on, but it's different now, and it's a different, and it's a much different quality now. To me, if somebody was bootlegging you, it's a quality problem because it means people are really interested in what you've got to say. Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, my feelings about music, as I connected with music in a very big way when I was a teenager. I was very lucky. Music was, I think of it as a golden age. But maybe my son thinks of his era as a golden age for music.
So you think that music has changed as far as its impact in culture and society from when you were consuming it to today?
Well. Yeah, obviously it has changed. I mean, the big movements for me musically when I was a teenager were glam rock, which really didn't connect in America in a big way. I mean, certainly first of all, music was not as global as it is today. I mean, artists like David Bowie, Roxy Music, Queen, these were artists that I was into when I was a teenager. They were huge in England, but they weren't really, Bowie was like a cult artist in the US. He didn't have a hit until, much later on. And artists were not touring the world. They were not, it wasn't until you got these sort of mega bands like The Who and Genesis, and they started putting global tours together, and then record labels started to think in terms of, a global approach to marketing a record. And then it became, you had this sort of 18-month album release cycle, which meant that artists kind of slowed the process down in a way. I think the Beatles put out an album about once every 8 months, and now most successful artists are encouraged to put out an album about every 3 years.
And so it's counterintuitive to everything else that's happened with media and culture, right? So as a reporter, I have to put out a blog post several times a day. Whereas,
think of something to say.
Yeah, exactly. I've got to think of something to say. That's what the beer's for. So with the music industry, it's gone the other direction. Is it starting to shift back a little bit, or is it still is this the norm now?
Well, I'm not terribly in touch with what young people are listening to, and there are people of my age that would say that the music business is in a terrible state, that it's never been worse. But there are a lot of young people out there that would say that last year was a fantastic year for music. I think it just depends where you are and how your receivers are, where the music is out there. As I said, when I was 17, I was living it. I didn't have children. I wasn't concerned with school. I wasn't concerned with whether I was going to be able to get from Munich to Vienna, or any of that. I was all about what songs are coming out this week, and where can I hear them, and if I like them, can I afford to buy them? And I think that young people are still, in that place. But, as we get older and we take on adult responsibilities, we're not quite so in the thick of it as we used to be.
So what role has, we should talk about the Here Right Now project, but what role has, so it's interesting, when I first bought, and I actually didn't ever buy a record, I bought my first tape. But I remember the experience of sitting in my friend's room, and we played this tape, and we looked through what were they called?
The liner notes.
The liner notes. Thank you very much. And now it's the size of a postage stamp on iTunes. Yeah. So you have to create these other experiences to go with them. And that's something that you've been experimenting with recently.
When we first went to Apple in Cupertino, I met Robert Condrick, who runs iTunes there, and we became good friends. And something that Robert was really concerned with, he very much wanted to somehow find a way to get that experience. We bonded over album covers, we bonded over that old school presentation of music, and it was something that he was fretting over, how can we get that back? And they were talking about, they were just developing their first iTunes albums, and we've played around with that. I don't know that the younger generation, for want of a better term, really care. I think it's moved on. I think that they have no nostalgia for it the way that we do, because they never experienced it that way. So maybe they don't really care about those details.
So they'll have nostalgia for YouTube clips when the next YouTube comes along and usurps that. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions to Josette about the Here Right Now project. Can you tell us a little bit about it for the people that may not know?
Sure. So starting today, you can log on to hererightnow.org. It's a project that we have collaborated on as an organization with Duran. We've collaborated over the past year. And so what it is it's an online data visualization project to visualize people's needs around the world. Actually, that was the original concept, was we would visualize people's needs all around the world. It morphed through conversations with Duran into what it is now. So I'm actually going to pull it up. It's inspired by their most recent album, All You Need Is Now. Play.
Is this a slideshow of the...
It's supposed to go through in a video.
So while that's loading up, how did you end up working together?
I think it was through Rachel Masters.
It was through Rachel Masters.
Yeah.
So Rachel and I were on a layover last DLD, and so we actually started talking about Duran wanting to do a data visualization project to get feedback from their fans. And so what we've been able to do is create a site where we're allowing their fans to share images based on series of prompts. So we want to visualize commonalities between terms like view, red, friends, moon, and beautiful. So we've started with the simplest terms now, and we'd eventually like to move into more emotional terms.
I mean, one of the things we've found over the last 18 months is how much power there is in our own fans having connectivity. And watching when we actually all started getting involved in social media, I'd say it was as important that fans and friends began connecting across countries and around the world as it was with them connecting with us. And I think that we could actually feel the energy grow around the band again in a way that it hadn't been since the early 80s. But it was all happening, on the internet. And so this is an opportunity, really, for us to develop those relationships even more.
It's interesting you say that. It's very un-rock star of you, but to think about fans connecting to other fans and not just connecting to you. And I mean, I've seen this project, and it definitely feels like this is something that does that. What kind of feedback are you getting? I mean, what kind of user response are you getting from this?
So we're literally just launching it today. So we've only launched it privately to the Duran community. We've been making user feedback tweaks. Duran has such an amazingly loyal community. We've got some amazing feedback so far, so we've just been continuing to update the interface. I should mention that Duran was really keen on allowing as many people as possible to use it, so we actually created 2 versions of the site. One of them in 3D, which is using a WebGL library, the second one using Google Maps, which is a 2D library. So you're able to use modern browsers and view the sort of 3D globe, but at the same time, people without access to a modern browser can also contribute to the site. So it's really important to reach diverse communities across the globe.
And you're also incorporating Twitter and social media into it, that's right?
That's right. So we're trying to foster the conversations through the hashtag right now. But at the same time, when you select your prompt, you see a real-time Twitter feed, so you actually see the conversation around that term.
That's great. And how does as someone who created some of the most amazing early videos in the '80s, how does this is this a different experience? Is it the same? Is it how does it feel?
I think it's going to grow in a very interesting way. I mean, I feel like we've began quite simply, really, using very simple terms. They're connected to the band in ways. Each word is sort of a notifier for particular songs of ours. But I think the idea is that the words are going to get more and more, obscure. And I think that people's input into it is going to get more and more interesting. So it's going to be quite challenging. I think people are going to get attached to attachments. They're going to get attached to the concept, and it's going to be something that people are going to want to take part in. And again, they're going to be. I mean, there's something great about seeing, somebody in Honolulu, and it's right their idea of a sunset, and comparing it with somebody's, in Istanbul, and.
So the site was made in a way that eventually we'll be able to open up the data and remix it. So we'll be able to visualize it in different ways, and we hope to see these patterns that you've just described.
And what's the URL for it?
HereRightNow.org.
So we have to wrap up, but I just want to ask you one last question. What's your favorite Duran song?
You're asking me or Josette?
Planet Earth.
Planet Earth.
I don't have one.
Oh. All right. Well,
all you need is now.
Oh, there you go. Thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.